You know that person who still drives the same car they bought 10 years ago? The paint has lost its shine in the exact spots the sun hits every afternoon. There's a small crack in the dashboard they stopped noticing years ago. The engine makes a low sound on cold mornings that they could recognize anywhere. They know precisely how much pressure the driver's door needs to close on the first try. They know the exact moment the steering wheel hums on the highway. And strangely, they're at peace with all of it. Meanwhile, everyone around them keeps trading up. A new lease every few years. New screens, new sensors, new badges in the driveway. And every time someone notices that old car, the same question arrives. Why haven't you replaced it yet? Here's the interesting part. Many of these people easily could. They just choose not to. And psychology suggests that choice has almost nothing to do with the car itself. Because driving the same car for 10 years says something far deeper about the person behind the wheel. Modern culture is built on replacement. Phones, shoes, furniture, routines, even the way we present ourselves. Everything is designed to be swapped the moment it feels familiar. The second something stops being new, the world quietly labels it outdated. Advertising depends on this. It works by making people slightly unhappy with what they already own. Not because the old thing failed, but because contentment is terrible for business. A person who feels satisfied with what they have is almost impossible to sell to. And cars became one of the loudest status symbols we have. People don't simply drive them. They broadcast identity through them. Success, taste, ambition, importance. Researchers at the University of Michigan found that material purchases are often tied to social comparison and the regulation of self-image. In plain language, people frequently buy things not because they need them, but because they want to feel validated by how others see them. That's what makes upgrading addictive. The new car doesn't actually change your life, but for a few weeks it changes how you feel about yourself. And this is exactly where the person driving the same car for 10 years becomes fascinating. Because they quietly step out of that loop. They stop using purchases as emotional proof. That aging car becomes evidence of something rare today. Internal stability. Think about it. Most people live inside constant change. Jobs shift. Apps update. Prices climb. Friendships fade. Entire trends rise and vanish within a single season. The human mind was never built for this much motion. And psychologists have known for a long time that people instinctively reach for the familiar during stress and uncertainty. Familiar surroundings lower mental strain. Familiar routines settle the nervous system. Familiar objects create a sense of ground beneath your feet. Which means sometimes an old car isn't just transportation. Sometimes it's one of the few steady things a person has left. They know how it feels, how it sounds, how it answers. There's a quiet comfort in that predictability, especially for someone who spends the rest of their day surrounded by things they can't control. In psychology, this connects to something called the mere exposure effect. The more familiar something becomes, the more emotionally attached we naturally grow to it. Not because the object improves, but because familiarity itself feels safe. And over enough time, that car stops registering as an object at all. It starts to feel like a part of life. That car was there through breakups and first jobs. Late drives with no destination. Hospital parking lots. Family trips. School pickups. The long drive home after a day that broke something inside them. Researchers studying autobiographical memory found that physical objects often become storage systems for personal identity and emotion. We attach our stories to things without even trying. So when someone finally lets an old car go, they're often not grieving the machine. They're grieving the years pressed into it. That car silently witnessed entire versions of them that no longer exist. Most people walking past it see worn metal. The owner sees memory. This is also why people who keep the same car for years tend to care less about outside approval. And that's becoming genuinely rare. Social media turned ordinary life into a performance. What you wear, where you eat, what you drive, even how happy you appear became things to display. But eventually some people grow tired of it. Tired of performing success. Tired of proving themselves. Tired of upgrading simply because everyone else is. And something shifts inside a person the moment they stop needing strangers to be impressed. They become much harder to manipulate. That's why some people keep driving the same old car long after they could afford anything else. The car stopped being tied to their self-worth a long time ago. And honestly, many people quietly admire that. There's something calming about a person who no longer needs proof that they're doing fine. Researchers studying materialism consistently found that people with lower attachment to status possessions often report higher emotional well-being and less comparison anxiety. Because comparison never ends. There will always be a newer car, a bigger house, a more expensive version of someone else's life. The person who peacefully keeps the same car for a decade simply steps off that track. And maybe that's why others judge them so quickly. Deep down, that old car represents freedom from a game most people are still trapped inside. Now, not everyone keeps an old car out of wisdom. Sometimes money truly is the reason. But even then, psychology still applies. Because something happens to people as they get older. They stop chasing excitement and start chasing peace. New things create stimulation. Familiar things create calm. That's an enormous difference. A new car means new payments, new buttons, new software, new worry over the first scratch. The old car already fits the shape of your life perfectly. No learning curve. No pressure. Just familiarity. And after years of stress, many adults quietly start arranging their lives around less mental exhaustion instead of more excitement. The strange thing is that our culture often mistakes simplicity for failure. If someone keeps old things, people assume they lack drive or gave up or can't afford better. But psychologically, simplicity often takes more confidence than performance does. Because choosing it means being comfortable disappointing what society expects from you. That's hard, especially now. Driving an old car in a world obsessed with status quietly says, I don't need every stranger to approve of my life. And there's another layer people rarely mention. Decision fatigue. Modern life demands thousands of small choices every day. Notifications, updates, options, comparisons. The brain wears down. Researchers studying cognitive overload found that too many decisions drain mental energy and raise stress in measurable ways. Which explains why so many adults slowly simplify as they age. Same routines, same meals, same car. Not because they became dull, but because peace started mattering more than novelty. And there's something deeply human in that. The world keeps insisting you should always want more. Bigger, newer, faster. But eventually some people arrive at a quietly dangerous question. What if what I already have is enough? That question reshapes a person. Because the moment someone genuinely feels enough, consumer culture loses most of its power over them. And maybe that's the real psychology behind people who drive the same car for 10 years. It isn't laziness. It isn't fear of change. Sometimes it's emotional security. Sometimes it's attachment to memory. Sometimes it's exhaustion with comparison. Sometimes it's quiet confidence. And sometimes it's simply a person realizing life became calmer the moment they stopped upgrading themselves for everyone else. To most people, it's just an old car sitting in a driveway. But to the person driving it, that car holds something much larger. Familiarity, stability, memory, peace. And in a world constantly trying to convince you that you're incomplete without the next upgrade, keeping the same car for 10 years might quietly be one of the strongest signs that someone finally stopped searching for their worth in things. Before you go, I want to ask you something. How long have you driven the same car? And honestly, would you ever trade it away?